In this week's episode of the True Grappler Archetype, we discuss the issues that can arise when we as mammals don't have enough stimulus in our lives. Particularly rough and tumble play, which can be used to describe grappling sports. A lack of roughhousing creates a range of problems for growing children and adults, and several studies have shown that adults without an outlet that involves roughhousing are much more prone to development problems. Their brains and bodies deteriorate much more quickly. And, interestingly enough, a lack of play was a primary factor in predicting criminal behavior among murderers in Texas prisons. Those who do not have an outlet have been shown to experience higher rates of isolation, depression, ill physical health, and mental decline in later stages of life. This leads back to the earlier study. People who don't take part in communal activities such as roughhousing were more likely to rate themselves lower on an index of self-rated health. And even more interesting is that the children who had less RTP, which is rough and tumble play, were more likely to avoid playing with others because of the difficulties in deciphering emotions and a lack of understanding when it came to social boundaries. So, if an outlet for play was reintroduced at a later stage of life, how would that affect the individual? Given the data and studies conducted, it is not a far stretch to say that it could help them feel whole again. Comparatively to other sports, I would wager that the adherence rates amongst an older demographic when practicing jiu-jitsu is high against other forms of exercise. Does that mean there is some truth to the BJJ Save My Life posts? It's entirely possible. Play and tactile learning are being shortened or eliminated from schools at all ages. Studies have shown that this type of play is being penalized or even criminalized at a very young age. Overprotective parents and schools who are afraid of lawsuits and potential liabilities have created a trend of perfectly normal behavior being punished. It is important to note that a study did actually make a distinction between what is roughhousing and actual aggression. One associated with affiliation and one associated with competition. These two distinct motivation circuits and this type of behavior is critical in building emotional skills in young children, especially in areas of emotional decoding. Another interesting point is that the children who engage in lots of roughhousing with their fathers, yes, I said fathers, as fathers were the preferred playmate for roughhousing, often were more popular. Children who did not engage in this type of play with their fathers often have difficulty with deciphering emotions, which makes them less likely to want to play and polish their social skills. This makes the notion of roughhousing being eliminated or cut by some percentage very dangerous. Children are growing up without the necessary social contact that they need with their peer group to develop into socially well-adjusted humans. Furthermore, a lot of structured physical activities were developed when rough and tumble play was much more accepted, or even routinely implemented. The hypothesis being that the pedagogy of grappling systems is unconsciously rooted in an assumption that children would develop normally before participating in these disciplines, which is not the case in modern times. This could be a potential reason for the increase of BJJ and grappling as a sport. We have begun to crave what was so readily available in our immediate history. In an age where we have experienced a tremendous amount of change in our lifestyle, children and young adults who have grown alongside policies that downplay this type of play have started to exhibit symptoms of anxiety and depression. Some studies point the blame at social media and technology, as research suggests that millennials are the most anxious generation. Although that could still be perfectly right, a lack of play could also be a driving factor in individuals who experience anxiety and depression. Those who experience these types of feelings are often prescribed medication, which helps to fight depression and keep the negative feelings at bay. What if I told you BJJ invokes a similar response? Or at least it could be an antidote to some of the negative feelings you are having. Please bear with me while I make some fairly emotional and subjective statements based on what I've read and researched. And just a disclaimer, I'm not saying grappling sports are a cure-all for mental health. But for some people who have milder mental health issues, BJJ certainly could bridge the gap between their current state and their history. Being able to learn boundaries, respect, and being comfortable in life-threatening situations builds depth of character and helps to bolster a strong capacity for life. According to one study, people who have experienced hardship and difficulty tend to be more optimistic and present in happy moments. They savor happiness because of their past trauma or difficulties. However, those currently going through difficult experiences or situations did not feel the same way. Only those who have moved past a difficult time in their life were able to live a happier life. Another article suggested that the difficult nature of some activities are exactly what inspire us to keep trying to master it. This holds some truth to Jiu-Jitsu as a hobby and sport. It is incredibly difficult, and you will undeniably get smashed for months on end before you feel like you are making any sort of progress. However, you keep packing your bags and make your way to class despite this so that you can see if you can pass Tim's guard or do that technique you learned off Instagram. Which reminds me, please like and subscribe if you are enjoying this so far. It helps a lot and YouTube will push this video out to people who jiu-jitsu just like you. So even though the advice of just getting on with it can sometimes come across as impersonal and harsh, there is evidence to suggest that this is exactly what should be done. I can't stress how much BJJ has personally helped my mental and emotional well-being. The constant grind of life can really affect your personal health, and being able to put that aside and practice jiu-jitsu can really give me a level of mental clarity to clear out the cache that builds up during the day. I'd argue that it's helpful to get back to our roots and find some time to better our physical health through grappling sports and rough and tumble play. Especially in the busyness of the modern world and the lifestyle that presents to us, being able to get back to what really makes us human can help us open our door to our happiness. Of course, some of what I just said is personal testimony and opinion, so let's get back to the facts at hand. Let's talk about the process of grappling and helping people overcome personal hardship. As you have already observed, the percentage of people who catch the BJJ bug and become lifelong learners is relatively high. What happens to your average Joe when he has been practicing jiu-jitsu for a 12-month period? Let's take a look at his personal timeline and add in a few milestones that signify important changes or events. This timeline is based on 3 studies based on the observed effect between exercise and self-confidence, as well as a study that observes the effect between prolonged difficulty against psychological changes. Let's take a look at Joe's physiological and psychological state at day 0. Joe will go to jiu-jitsu class tomorrow. He has been reading about it on Reddit and his friends tell him it's a great sport. Joe is unsure of whether he will stick to it since he has trouble sticking to exercise and typically doesn't enjoy it. He has low self-esteem and poor physical health. Day 1. Joe felt a bit awkward wrapping his legs around another man, but did as he was told. He got his ass kicked and is out of breath after a couple of light sparring rounds under the watchful eye of the coach. He is experiencing a sudden rush of neurohormones and happiness as the dopamine and serotonin hits his brain. He is extremely hungry, so stops by at a McDonald's on his way home to devour way more than his usual portion. Day 2. Joe wakes up sore in places he never realized he could be sore, but nonetheless continues to attend class anyway. Week 2. Joe has been attending 3 to 4 classes a week and is really starting to enjoy jiu-jitsu. He has started to get to know the people at the gym and sometimes grabs a meal with some of the other gym members. After all, you wrap your legs around someone, you probably want to buy them dinner first, huh? Month 3. Joe starts noticing he is losing weight and his friends have noticed too. He has noticed he has been getting more attention from women as a result too. Is this due to the weight loss or the newfound confidence? Month 6. Joe has started to develop more skills on the mats and is starting to get into more advantageous positions. He is no longer always the nail, he can sometimes be the hammer. Year 1. Joe has lost a tremendous amount of weight, is in great physical condition, has a great set of friends around him, and is reaping the benefits that come with grappling sports. His friends and family have noticed a difference in his attitude, and he seems more healthy. He even has a girlfriend. And as a result of this, he stops training and she ends up cheating on him with one of his former training partners. He would fight back, but he's so terribly out of shape he can't even see his own feet. He probably shouldn't have quit jiu-jitsu. Although the tale of Joe can seem arbitrary, rudimentary, and potentially stupid, this is exactly what happens to many BJJ practitioners all over the world, excluding the last little dig, of course. Gaining confidence and being able to practice grappling has many benefits since it's literally hardwired in our development. In the next episode, we discuss the neurological effects BJJ has on the brain and what happens when we use key motivators to propel our growth in Jiu-Jitsu.